Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I'm going to be looking at inking today, and I thought I'd start by just looking back on some of the artwork and the sketches that I did the first time I went to Iceland. Now, the first time we went, we jumped in a car and we drove 5 hours out of Reykjavik towards the south because we were going to look at ice beaches and the mountains. And the amazing thing about Iceland is that the roads are pretty much just straight, and around you with a 360 view is just mountains, just all around. I ended up drawing a ton of mountains and had loads of fun doing it, and didn't really think too much about what I was doing, to be honest. I was just drawing what I was seeing and really loving keeping them simple, playing around with different types of pens. This one here is a water brush pen, and I moved on to doing some watercolor and kept that super simple as well, and just pretty much just used loads of different washes. And I also used a brown pen that happened to not be waterproof, which was great because then I had loads of fun just making it bleed all over the page, and then drew little people and trees to give it perspective. And I didn't really do any more than that. I did loads of these types of things and experimented. And then I always thought how great it would be when I had the time one day to revisit all of these things, because there's something so powerful about standing next to a mountain. It makes me feel peaceful, gives me a sense of perspective, and I would love to create artwork that mirrors even a fraction of that feeling and helps other people feel like that as well. So I thought, where better to start than looking at one of the oldest forms of inking, which is Japanese sumi. Japanese sumi is an ancient art form, and it was brought over to Japan by Chinese monks. So there's this philosophy behind it about meditation and mindfulness, and they take time to prepare their ink, to prepare their materials, and the ink is made of soot and glue, and it's not really so much about the final artwork. It's mostly about the process and taking the time to be meditative through it. So that's kind of a good starting point for me when I was thinking about mountains, because it's great to just jump straight into something and not think too much about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and sometimes just to explore through the process and then see what comes out on the other side. So that's where I've begun, and this piece here is by a Japanese artist from the 15th century called Tensho Shuban, and he creates these really beautiful pieces where there's just very washy backgrounds and then loads of detail in the foreground. And then there's this style, which is much bolder. Every single stroke has a purpose. And yeah, so I'll be looking at this style and taking a couple of Skillshare classes on it. Now, because I'm going to be on location, I'm not going to be using ink and water because it's really messy, and I'm not going to be able to do that while I'm outside. I can just imagine it to be absolute chaos, especially if it's raining or something. So I have decided that I'm going to be using a brush pen, because that for me suits my purpose, and we'll see where it goes from there. So I have this brush pen here. It's a Pentel. It's brilliant. It's really, really good, and it comes with, well, you have to buy these, but these are the cartridges from Pentel, and it's great. I love it. You get so much detail out of it. It's less messy. You can't get a wash, but that's something that I'm going to explore later. But for now, I'm going to have a look at all the different brush techniques that there is through using this particular pen. There's this technique called press and lift, which if you were using a brush would have a little bit more of a watery effect, but with a brush pen, you press down, drag, and then lift. And then you get this effect where each end is heavier, and then there's, imagine if I was using a brush there, that would be watery. But I kind of like how it comes out with this pen. It gives it some texture. And then we have things like the very fine line weight pressing down and then coming up at the end. So messing around with the different ways you can do that. And there's a great little dry brush effect. If you turn the brush on its side, and then you get this dry brush effect because the ink doesn't have time to fill up and replace itself. I learnt that from a great Skillshare class from Marie Noel Worm, when I'll put a little link to her at the bottom of this video. So looking at some other little techniques here. So there we go. There's some experiments, some different line weights, some different brush techniques and strokes. And I think it's given me a pretty good idea of what I can take later on and use in my drawings. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back with the next part of my journey.